I agree with what you say. I like your example. It's very nice. To think of just greetings where there's not much to decode basically, and to say you don't need to mentalize for a greeting. In fact, they just here's a case where yes, it is a signal, and there's very little information content apart from so what they show you is that they're greeting you basically, and everything follows from that. And the meaning of the greeting in general doesn't go beyond that. In the case that you evoke of having had a noisy party and your neighbor who normally doesn't even greet you now say good morning, is very nice, very good example. So yeah, you get all these kind of complexities, and that's a very good illustration. Just one point where I may not, but where you're expressing something that others have also expressed and where I'm reluctant, I've already alluded to that, to agree, is I don't think, I think it's a mistake to assume that meta-representation is necessarily more effortful. It's taken as kind of obvious point in the literature that both developmental, comparative, and so on. So that you want to, it's much better to have an account where meta-presentations plays no role and so on. So I'm not convinced, and since I mentioned that, so you just mentioned that in passing, and that's why that's why I sorry. Uh, uh, that's why I'm reacting to it. But let me just give you an example. Suppose somebody points to you to something where the information is there, so to speak. It points to you a map, or so you can just look at what's in front of your eyes, and they make a verbal comment which will have to be mentalistically interpreted. Often it's easier to get the help from the mentalistic communication that comments on the evidence than getting from the evidence directly, even though you could get it from the evidence by yourself. So it just isn't the case. A map may not be a good example because it's interpreted in other ways, but there are evidence, symptoms or whatever. So yeah, you could see the evidence if you work on it, but you may just sit back and wait for the comment, because and therefore for mentalistic interpretational evidence, because that's easier to process. So again, there is no well-established fact of the matter that meta-representation is more expensive than the alternative. So it's something to study. I'm not saying it's not. By the way, I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's costless. Of course, it's not costless. And so, but as I said, with the color and black and white. So it's we should have an open mind on that. And we shouldn't think, oh, it's very important to get an account of what's happening where meta-representation, if preferably no role at all, and if a role as little role as possible. Mm. And it can be quite domain specific. So yesterday I was attending a seminar at the CU in Vienna, I mean, online, of course, where it was issues in theory of games, and when you're thinking about what the other things that I think is strategic thinking, and the more levels. Yeah, it may be that many level strategic thinking is difficult, and so typically in artificial situation. It may be that in real life conditions where already like the complexity of the guy who says good morning when he normally doesn't say good morning, but you've been annoying because you've been noise over his head, and also you think maybe you have a hangover and all that. So then it's quite complex, but it may come to you very intuitively. So that's but that was a bit in passing. Okay, so maybe we move. So thanks for your comment, Angelica. So comparative issues. So there was the also actually in the comments from the reviewers, we have too little comments, as far as I'm concerned, about the comparative section on apes. But there's one comment by Charles that I wanted to react to. And again, he has much more to say, and he's written about it. He has a subsection of his book himself on the issue and so on. So if you should look at it if it's worth paying attention. He has really something to say. So in this paper, Charles Wright, Sperber and Wilson amply quote from research on ape communication. Of the scholars they quote, I also know Tomasello's work, and I know it quite well. However, I also discuss at some length the work by one other very well-known researcher of chimpanzee behavior that we do not refer to, Franz de Waal. And Waal is much more positive about chimpanzees' ability to communicate than Tomasello. I think my proposal avoids a needless complication in Sperber and Wilson's paper, and you also add you quote us saying communication is ubiquitous in the animal kingdom, but in the vast majority of well-documented cases, it's not intentional. And you mentioned the vervet monkey alarm call example that we give, and you say my hunch is that Sperber and Wilson are seriously mistaken here. Uh, so, we disagree. I don't think that somehow it's an issue that neither you nor us are specialists of comparative literature. See little reason to assume that your competence is much greater than ours. Franz de Waal has done very important work indeed on chimpanzees, not much on communication. If you look at on the comparative literature on ape communication, he's not often quoted. I mean, he's done a lot of social relationship, politics, reconciliation, emotions, and so on. Very interesting work, often too, but on communication, especially on the mechanism of communication, which is on the uses of mechanism of communication, which is what we discussed. There's no strong reason to quote Franz de Waal. So anyhow, I'm just quoting you, Charles, to give an example of the richness of the comment you presented, and why at the same time there's not that much sense to. They don't fit in this discussion of our paper. The discussion of the difference between you and us, and it's another topic.
Can I say something here?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Sorry for being out for an hour because my system didn't work. Yeah. So you say, Franz de Waal is not cited very much in the humanities. Yeah. I think
I didn't say that. I did. Like, look, I said he's not cited much. He's cited a lot in the humanities. Usually, I was saying he was not cited much. Charles, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
He's not cited much in the comparative psychology literature on communication.
No, that's true. But I think there is probably no scholar in the world, when he was still alive, he died earlier this year,
Yes.
who knows more about how chimpanzees interact with each other. So I think we should learn that. Of course, neither you nor I are primatologists, but Waal has had 50 years of experience watching how a chimpanzee community interacts on a daily basis. And I think he makes very strong points and very convincing arguments that they actually do communicate. They attract each other as attentions. They indulge in intentional behavior, and they respond, and therefore they know their relevance principle, their communicative relevance principle very well. So I think we should take him seriously and see what he has to say about this communication, and then see how this can be accommodated in the relevance perspective on communication.
First, yes, these are no point of. So, what kind of correction of the substance of what we say should we make if we accepted the Waal at face value? So you might say yes, and you may be right on that. I mean, it's very tentative on our part. So you take the case of a vervet monkey, maybe. So that's not Franz de Waal work, but the gel drift is maybe it's more intentional than what we think. There's some evidence to that effect. Take the issue of communication between chimps and the degree of awareness they have of each other's intentions, so maybe greater than what we and most of the experimental literature on communication assume. All that is true. But so there's no major point of disagreement. So maybe we should. There's one sentence here or there where we should say a bit more this or a bit more that, but that would mean to follow Franz de Waal against others like Tomasello. And so, frankly, I'm very interested in de Waal on political and social complexities relationship among chimpanzees. And when it comes to communication, I'm always into myself. But this is not today's discussion. I mean, you're totally entitled to the difference between us don't make us right or you wrong or the other way around. But this is not today's discussion. And again, the point where we differ, which you highlighted, are more or less kind of things, and doesn't change anything to the basic message of this paper, as far as I'm concerned. But again, it's another discussion. And thank you for your long comments, and thank you for your work generally. But that's arguing about Frans de Waal doesn't make much sense here. And yes, he's a great guy. He was a great guy. Okay.
Dan,
Yeah.
can I just add? I think Charles came in after my introduction, in which I mentioned work and thanked him for his work, and said that I'd
Okay.
written to him privately over the summer about some of the questions that we couldn't manage to fit in here. I didn't get a response from you, so I'm not sure that you received my comments. But anyway, we're very grateful to you for all those comments, and it was much more about the relation between your work and ours rather than our work, which is what we wanted to talk about today. That's all. But I appreciated your comments, so thank you.
So indeed, thank you. And let's move to